The exam door clicked shut. Naira Cole's fingers tightened around her backpack strap. She didn't knock, didn't beg. The hallway stretched empty behind her, fluorescent lights buzzing like they knew something she didn't. Her phone screen glowed, 8:02 a.m. 2 minutes late. 2 minutes that just erased 18 months of perfect attendance, sleepless nights, and a scholarship held together with paperwork so fragile it felt like breathing wrong could destroy it. She turned from the door. Her lungs burned not from running, but from the choice she'd made 43 minutes earlier when a stranger collapsed on her doorstep. Hi friend, before we continue the story, kindly tell us where are you watching from, and hit that subscribe button now for you to get more, and I have something new for you tomorrow. Stay tuned, thanks, let's continue. The woman had gripped Naira's doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Expensive coat, trembling hands, eyes that didn't match the polished exterior. Naira had checked the time then too. 7:19 a.m. Plenty of time, she'd thought. She was wrong. The 911 operator asked questions in that calm voice they train people to use, the one that assumes time is infinite. Address, symptoms, medical history. Naira answered everything while watching her future slip away in real time. The ambulance arrived at 7:41. Her bus had left at 7:20. Now she stood outside a locked exam room in a building that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Other students filtered past, some stretching, some laughing, none of them looking at her. She walked to the proctor's desk. "I had an emergency," Naira said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I called 911, someone collapsed, I can show you the call log." The proctor didn't look up from his tablet. His fingers kept moving across the screen like her words were background noise. "Doors closed at 8 o'clock, he said. "I know, but policy is policy." Those three words landed like a sentencing, clean, final, impossible to argue with. Naira's throat tightened. She wanted to explain about the woman's pale face, the way her knees buckled, the decision that felt so obvious in the moment and so catastrophic now. Instead, she nodded once and walked away. Her phone buzzed. Subject: examination absence recorded asterisk. No explanation requested, no appeal process mentioned, just documentation, cold and efficient. She pushed through the building's exit doors into morning air that felt too normal for what just happened. What she didn't know was that the woman she'd saved wasn't just anyone. And the people looking for that woman had resources that didn't show up on any syllabus. The email arrived on Thursday. 3 days of silence first. 3 days of Naira checking her phone every 17 minutes, waiting for someone to ask what happened, waiting for the university to care. Nobody did. Then her inbox pinged at 11:47 p.m. while she sat on her apartment floor surrounded by textbooks she could no longer afford to use. Subject: scholarship status review asterisk. Her stomach dropped before she even opened it. The language was polite, regretful even, words like unfortunately and institutional policy and funding obligations wrapped around the reality like silk over a knife. Her scholarship was under review. She had 14 days to submit documentation explaining her absence. Documentation that would be carefully considered by a committee that met once a month. Her exam was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. The math didn't work. Naira read it 3 times, each pass making her chest tighter. She'd helped someone, done exactly what every ethics class, every orientation seminar, every campus poster about community values said to do. And the system was punishing her for it. She grabbed her phone and started typing a response, deleted it, typed again, her fingers shook. "I called 911, I have proof. I stayed because she was alone and scared and nobody else opened their door." She stared at the words, then deleted them. Proof didn't matter to policy. She sent a shorter version, professional, apologetic, everything she hated about having to shrink herself to fit into boxes designed by people who never had to choose between a stranger's life and their own future. The reply came 6 hours later. "Your situation has been noted. The committee will convene on the 24th. Noted. Not understood, not valued. Noted. Like she was a footnote in someone else's meeting agenda. Naira set her phone face down and stared at the ceiling. Her lease was due in 9 days. Her savings account had $243. Her meal plan was attached to her student status. Everything was connected to everything else, and someone had just pulled the center thread. She didn't sleep that night. At 6:00 a.m., she got up, dressed, and went to her morning shift at the campus library. She shelved books in alphabetical order and smiled at students who didn't know her name. At lunch, she checked her email again. Subject: Financial Aid Status Update. Her hands went cold. The scholarship wasn't just under review anymore. It was suspended, pending the outcome of her academic standing evaluation, which was pending the committee meeting, which was pending documentation she'd already submitted. The loop was perfect. She sat in the break room with a sandwich she couldn't taste and thought about the woman from her doorstep, wondered if she even remembered Naira's face, wondered if she knew what that single morning had cost. Probably not. People like that didn't have to track consequences. Naira's phone buzzed. A known number. She almost didn't answer. Almost. Is this Naira Cole? The voice on the other end was male, calm, the kind of calm that came from never having to raise your voice to be heard. Yes, Naira said carefully. My name is Arden Hale. I'm calling on behalf of my employer regarding an incident last week. Naira's pulse spiked. What incident? A medical emergency. You assisted someone who became ill near your residence. The air in the break room suddenly felt thinner. Is she okay? Naira asked. She's recovering thanks to you. My employer would like to meet with you to express their gratitude. Gratitude. The word felt strange, foreign. I don't need thanks, Naira said. I just did what anyone would do. Most people didn't, Arden replied. There was no judgment in his tone, just fact. She knocked on 2 other doors before yours. No one answered. Naira closed her eyes. When would this meeting be? She asked. Tomorrow, 2:00 p.m. I'll send a car. I have class. I understand, the choice is yours. He gave her an address in Pacific Heights, the kind of neighborhood Naira had only seen through bus windows on her way to work. She agreed before she could talk herself out of it. The call ended. Naira sat there holding her phone, trying to figure out what just happened. The car. Pacific Heights. Employer. Nothing about this made sense. She pulled up the address on her phone. The building that appeared on the map had a gate, actual security, trees that looked intentional. Her stomach twisted. She thought about declining, thought about pretending the call never happened. But then she checked her bank account again. Balance $243.81. And she thought about the committee that wouldn't meet for another 11 days. She texted back. I'll be there. The response came immediately. A car will arrive at 1:30 p.m. Thank you, Naira. She stared at her name on the screen. He'd known it before she said it. Which meant they'd been looking for her. Which meant this wasn't just gratitude. The car wasn't what she expected. This was something else. Naira had pictured something sleek, black, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed money in a way that made people look twice. Instead, a silver sedan pulled up at exactly 1:30 p.m., modest enough to blend in but too clean to belong in her neighborhood. The driver didn't get out, didn't speak, just nodded when she approached. She climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something expensive she didn't have a name for. They drove in silence. Naira watched her neighborhood disappear through the window. Cracked sidewalks gave way to tree-lined streets. Corner stores became boutiques. Graffiti turned into murals with plaques underneath. 15 minutes. That's how long it took to cross into a completely different world. The car stopped in front of a building that didn't advertise itself. No sign, no name, just an address in brushed metal numbers beside a door that looked like it had never been knocked on. The driver finally spoke. 3rd floor, someone will meet you. Naira stepped out onto a sidewalk so clean it looked staged. Inside, the lobby was all glass and silence. A woman in a charcoal suit appeared from nowhere, smiled without showing teeth, and gestured toward an elevator. Ms. Cole, this way. They rode up without music, without conversation, just the soft hum of machinery moving them higher. The doors opened into a hallway that felt more like a gallery, art on the walls, real art, the kind museums kept behind ropes. The woman stopped at a door, knocked twice and stepped aside. "They're expecting you." Naira's hand hovered over the handle. She thought about her apartment, her suspended scholarship, the 14 days she didn't have. She pushed the door open. The room inside was bright, too bright, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, sunlight cutting across furniture that looked like it had been selected by someone who understood negative space. Two people stood near the window. The woman turned first. Naira recognized her immediately. Same face, different energy, no sweat, no fear, hair styled, posture perfect. "Naira," she said, crossing the room with her hand extended, "I'm Celine Ward." The name hit like a brick. Ward. As in Ward Industries, as in political fundraisers, as in foundations that put their names on hospital wings and university buildings. Naira shook her hand on autopilot. "This is my husband," Celine continued, gesturing to the man who hadn't moved. He was tall, controlled, the kind of person who made decisions in rooms most people never entered. He studied Naira like she was a contract he was considering signing. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice matched Arden's, same calm, same certainty. Naira found her voice. "Is this about what happened?" "It is," Celine said, "and I owe you an apology." That caught Naira off guard. "For what?" "For disappearing, for not reaching out sooner, for not knowing what helping me would cost you." Naira's chest tightened. "How do you know what it cost?" The husband spoke. "We made inquiries." 3 words that meant they dug into her life without asking. "Your scholarship was suspended," he continued. "Your academic standing is under review, your financial situation is precarious." Naira's jaw clenched. "You had no right." "We had every right," he interrupted, "not cruel, just factual. You saved my wife's life, that creates obligations." He nodded to someone Naira hadn't noticed standing near the door. Arden stepped forward with a folder. "We'd like to help," Celine said softly. Arden opened the folder on the table between them. Inside were numbers Naira had never seen attached to her name. Scholarship replacement, housing assistance, living stipend, legal support if needed. Everything. Fixed. Solved. Her throat went dry. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's what's fair," the husband said. Naira looked at the papers, at the people, at the room that cost more than her entire education. And something inside her recoiled. "No," she said. Silence dropped like a weight. Celine blinked. "Naira, I can't accept this." The husband's expression didn't change. Why not? Because it felt like hush money, because it turned her choice into a transaction, because accepting it meant this stayed private, stayed quiet, stayed hers alone. But she didn't say that. Instead, she said something worse. "Because I wasn't the only one." The words hung in the air. Celine frowned. "What do you mean?" Naira's hands were shaking now, but her voice stayed steady. "I wasn't the first student this happened to, and I won't be the last." The husband leaned forward slightly. "Explain." So she did. She told them about Marcus Chen, a pre-med student who missed his organic chemistry final because his roommate had a seizure. Policy didn't care, he lost his scholarship. She told them about Shanice Williams, who stayed with a girl having a panic attack in the library bathroom during her statistics exam. Marked absent, financial aid revoked. She told them about DeAndre Foster, who pulled someone out of a car accident on his way to campus, arrived 11 minutes late, doors were locked, appeal denied. The university has a zero-tolerance attendance policy for major examinations, Naira said. No exceptions, no appeals that actually matter, just documentation that goes into a file no one reads. She pulled out her phone and showed them the email, the one with the careful language and the impossible timeline. "This isn't about me," she continued. "This is about a system that punishes people for being human." The room went quiet. Celine looked at her husband. He didn't look back. He was staring at Naira like he was recalculating something. "You're asking us to take on an institution," he said finally, publicly. "I'm asking you not to make me the exception," Naira replied. "I'm asking you to make me the example." The temperature in the room shifted. Celine's expression changed, something flickered behind her eyes, recognition maybe or respect. She's right, Celine said quietly. Her husband turned to her, you understand what that means. I do. Legal battles, media attention, political pressure. I know. He studied his wife for a long moment. Then he stood. Arden, he said, get the helicopter ready. Naira blinked, what? He looked at her directly for the first time since she'd refused his money. We're going to your house, he said, and then we're going to war. Chapter 6. The helicopter blades cut through San Francisco fog at 4:17 p.m. Naira pressed her face against the window, watching her neighborhood shrink beneath her. Houses she'd walked past 1,000 times looked different from above. Smaller, more fragile. Her phone buzzed in her pocket for the 7th time in 20 minutes. She ignored it. Below, people were starting to notice. Heads tilted upward, phones raised. The machine circled once, low enough that Naira could see Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down, standing on her porch with her hand shielding her eyes. Where do you want us to land? The pilot asked through the headset. Naira pointed to the patch of dirt behind her apartment that the landlord called a yard. The helicopter descended. Dust kicked up in violent spirals, a neighbor's trash can tipped over, someone's laundry whipped off a clothesline. The skids touched ground. Naira climbed out, legs unsteady, into a scene that felt like it belonged in someone else's life. Celine followed, then her husband, then Arden carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Naira's rent. Every neighbor within 3 blocks had come outside. Phones everywhere, recording, posting, streaming live to people who'd want answers Naira didn't have yet. What are we doing? Naira asked, voice barely audible over the dying rotors. The husband looked at her, making noise. Arden was already on his phone. I need a press release drafted in the next hour, no faster, and get someone from legal on standby. Celine moved closer to Naira. This is going to get uncomfortable, people will ask questions, some won't be kind. I know, Naira said. Do you? Naira met her eyes, do you? Celine smiled for the first time since they'd met. Not really, but I'm learning. A car pulled up, black this time, tinted windows. A woman stepped out wearing a suit that meant business and an expression that meant she'd handled worse. Mrs. Ward, she said, nodding. Then to Naira, Ms. Cole, I'm Diane Rousseau. I represent the Ward family's legal interests. She handed Naira a card. Starting tomorrow morning, you'll need this. Why tomorrow? Because tonight, every news outlet in the Bay Area is going to want your story. Naira's stomach flipped. I didn't agree to that. You did, the husband said, when you asked us to make you the example. He wasn't wrong. Naira looked at the helicopter, at the neighbors, at her apartment door hanging slightly crooked on hinges she'd been meaning to fix. What happens now? She asked. Diane opened her briefcase. Inside were documents, organized with the kind of precision that came from years of knowing exactly which battles to pick. Now we file a formal complaint with the university's Board of Trustees. We request an emergency review of their attendance policies. We compile every case like yours from the last 5 years. How many are there? 23 that we found so far, probably more. 23. 23 people who chose compassion and got punished for it. We'll need statements, Diane continued. From you, from the other students if they're willing, from the paramedics who responded to Mrs. Ward. Arden was still on his phone. I've got 3 reporters confirmed for tomorrow morning, 2 more pending. Naira's chest tightened. This is happening fast. It has to, the husband said. The longer we wait, the more time they have to craft a response that buries this. He turned to face her fully. Are you ready? No. She wasn't. But she nodded anyway. Because 23 other people deserved better than silence. The first interview went live at 6:00 a.m. Naira sat in a chair that had been positioned to catch morning light, microphone clipped to her collar, makeup applied by someone who kept saying just a little more until Naira's face felt like a mask. Across from her, a reporter named Jessica Chen smiled with teeth so white they looked tactical. Tell us what happened the morning of your exam, Jessica said. Naira told her. Not the sanitized version, not the careful one. The real one. About the woman on her doorstep, the trembling hands, the choice that felt obvious until it destroyed everything. And the university's response, Jessica asked. Naira pulled out her phone and read the email, every word, including the ones that made her voice shake. Policy is policy, she said, that's what they told me. The camera zoomed closer. How did that make you feel? Like she'd been erased, like her choice didn't matter, like the system valued paperwork more than people. But she didn't say that. Angry, Naira said instead, and scared, because if this could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. The interview aired during the morning commute. By 9:00 a.m., it had been shared 42,000 times. By noon, the university had released a statement. Naira read it on her phone while sitting in Diane's office, surrounded by people in suits who spoke in acronyms she didn't understand. The university remains committed to academic integrity and consistent policy enforcement. While we sympathize with Ms. Cole's circumstances, exceptions cannot be made without compromising the educational standards we uphold for all students. Diane set down her coffee. That's corporate for we don't care. What do we do? Naira asked. We hit back harder. By 3:00 p.m., Diane had secured statements from 4 other students. Marcus, Shanice, DeAndre, and a girl named Amara Johnson who'd missed her final because she stopped to help an elderly man who'd fallen on the steps outside the lecture hall. All of them had lost scholarships. None of them had received appeals. Diane compiled everything into a document that read like an indictment. She sent it to every major news outlet in California. Then she sent it to the university's board of trustees with a subject line that didn't ask for anything. Pattern of institutional negligence, formal complaint. The phone calls started immediately. First from reporters, then from university administrators, then from lawyers who worked for people Diane refused to name. They're scared, she said, hanging up on the 5th call in an hour. Good, the husband said from across the room. He'd been quiet most of the day, watching, calculating. Now he stood and buttoned his jacket. Time to apply pressure. How? Naira asked. He smiled. It wasn't warm. Money talks, but taking it away screams. Within an hour, 3 major donors to the university received personal calls. Naira didn't hear what was said. But she saw the results. By 6:00 p.m., the university released a second statement. We are conducting an internal review of our attendance policies and will be reaching out to affected students to discuss potential remedies. Potential remedies. Not apologies. Not accountability. Remedies. Naira read it twice, feeling something cold settle in her chest. They're trying to make this go away quietly, she said. They are, Diane agreed, which means we don't let it. The second interview aired at 8:00 p.m. This time Naira wasn't alone. Marcus sat beside her, then Shanice, then DeAndre, then Amara. 5 students, 5 stories, 1 pattern. The reporter asked each of them the same question. What do you want the university to do? Marcus spoke first. Acknowledge what happened to all of us. Shanice leaned forward. Change the policy so this doesn't happen to someone else. DeAndre's voice was steady. Stop pretending compassion is a violation. Amara looked directly at the camera. Stop punishing people for being human. Then the reporter turned to Naira. And you, Miss Cole, what do you want? Naira thought about the woman on her doorstep, about the helicopter, about the 23 names Diane had found. I want them to prove that students matter more than paperwork. The interview ended. The responses didn't. By midnight, the hashtag policy over people was trending in 7 states. By 2:00 a.m., the university's board had called an emergency meeting. Naira lay awake in a hotel room the wards had paid for, staring at her phone as notifications rolled in faster than she could read them. Support, outrage, threats, donations to a legal fund she didn't know existed. Her life had become public property in less than 24 hours. And somewhere in Pacific Heights, a man who owned half the city was making calls that would reshape an institution that thought it was untouchable. Naira closed her eyes. Tomorrow the real fight started. The board meeting was closed to the public. That didn't stop 300 students from showing up anyway. They filled the plaza outside the administration building, holding signs that said things like asterisk, "We are not policy violations, asterisk asterisk, and compassion is not a crime." Naira stood at the edge of the crowd, hood up, trying to stay invisible. It didn't work. Someone recognized her. Then someone else. Within minutes she was surrounded. "Thank you for speaking up," a girl said, tears in her eyes. "This happened to my brother," someone else added. "He dropped out because he couldn't afford to stay after they suspended his aid." Stories poured out, each one a variation of the same theme. People punished for caring. Naira listened to all of them, chest tight, realizing the weight of what she'd started. Inside the building, Diane sat across from 6 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Arden stood behind her, silent but present. The husband had stayed away. Strategic absence, he'd called it, let them think this was just lawyers and paperwork. He was wrong. This was a reckoning. Diane opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents thick enough to make the board members shift in their seats. 23 documented cases over 5 years, she began. Students who missed mandatory examinations due to medical emergencies, family crises, or acts of assistance to others in distress, all resulted in academic penalties. 16 lost scholarships, 9 were forced to withdraw, 3 are currently working multiple jobs to afford reinstatement. She slid the first document across the table. "This is a pattern, not isolated incidents. A pattern of institutional policy that prioritizes administrative convenience over student welfare." One board member, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, picked up the document. "These are serious allegations," she said carefully. "They're facts," Diane corrected, "documented. Verified facts." Another board member, younger, leaned forward. "Our attendance policy exists to maintain academic standards. We can't make exceptions for every." "Every what?" Diane interrupted. "Every student who calls 911, every student who stops to help someone in crisis, every student who demonstrates the exact values your mission statement claims to instill." Silence. The board chair, an older man who'd spent 30 years in academic administration, cleared his throat. "What are you proposing?" Diane didn't hesitate. "Policy reform, immediate reinstatement of all affected students without penalty, financial restitution for scholarship losses, and a formal public acknowledgement that your current system failed." "That's not a proposal," the younger board member said. "That's a demand." "It is," Diane agreed. "And if you refuse, we'll file a class action lawsuit by end of business tomorrow." The board chair's expression hardened. "You're threatening us." "I'm offering you a choice," Diane said. "Fix this internally or have it fixed for you publicly in a courtroom with media present." Outside, the crowd had grown. Students had been joined by faculty members, then parents, then local reporters who smelled blood in the water. Naira's phone buzzed. A text from Celine, "How are you holding up?" Naira typed back, "Scared." The response came immediately, "Good, fear means you care, indifference is what gets people killed." Inside the building, the board had requested a 15-minute recess. Diane knew what that meant. They were calling their lawyers. Good. Let them realize how expensive defending the indefensible would be. When they returned, the board chair's expression had changed. "We're prepared to offer a compromise," he said. Diane waited. "We'll review the attendance policy with student input. We'll consider case-by-case appeals for the students you've identified, and we'll issue a statement acknowledging that our current system may have unintended consequences." "No," Diane said. The board chair blinked. "Excuse me. May have unintended consequences, case-by-case appeals." Diane leaned forward. "You're offering to review whether you were wrong. That's not a compromise, that's a delay tactic. We're trying to be reasonable." "You're trying to avoid accountability," Diane said, "and I'm done being reasonable." She stood. "You have until 5:00 p.m. tomorrow to accept our terms. After that, we file." She walked out. Arden followed. Outside, the crowd erupted in cheers when they saw her. Someone had live-streamed the entire exchange through a window. The university's compromise was already trending. People were furious. Naira found Diane near the parking lot. What happens now? She asked. Diane looked exhausted. Now we wait and see if they're smart enough to cut their losses. And if they're not, then we take everything public and watch them try to defend the indefensible on national television. Naira's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Celine. It was an email. From the university. Subject: Emergency Board Decision. Her hands shook as she opened it. The email was short. Too short for something that had taken 5 years to break. The Board of Trustees has voted to implement immediate policy reform regarding attendance requirements in cases of documented emergency. All affected students will be contacted directly regarding reinstatement procedures. A formal statement will be released tomorrow morning. Naira read it 3 times. Then she showed it to Diane.